dealing with clarity and concision. What exactly does this mean? Well, it's how you write. It's how you express your thoughts when you write. And we have here, it says a bad example. Well, let's just cross this out for a minute. Judge this on its own merits here without looking at the bad example part. It says here, independent thought is highly valued in society, but it is better that knowledge, if it is arrived at, is achieved through the collection of a group of people. Okay, so we're going to take this apart. What exactly is it saying? Well, it's saying independent thought is highly valued in society. So far, so good. But it is better than knowledge. Well, what is it? Society. Oh, I see, independent thought. But independent thought is better than knowledge. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. So right off you can see, oh, this sentence is heading downhill. But that knowledge, if it is arrived at. Okay, is it necessary to say if it is arrived at? Doesn't it seem like you're adding something on? Can't you express this a different way? Knowledge is achieved through a collection of a group of people. So what exactly is going on here? Knowledge is achieved? What sort of knowledge? Knowledge about society in general? Just knowledge? Well, who are these group of people? Are they the ones with the independent thought? What's going on? So at the end of the day, you're going to have all these question marks here. You can see that this is not concise. That means doesn't use as few words as possible to convey a point, and it's not clear because we're not exactly sure what it's saying. You can even notice here at the end, the collection of a group is a collection, a group of people are a group. So you can see that all of this is redundant, so it's just a poorly written sentence. So now we're going to take a look at an example where we have clarity. We know what they're saying, and we have concision. It's not that long. Notice right off the bat that sentence stops right there. It's almost half the size of the sentence above it. Let's see what it says. Independent thought, while highly valuable. Okay, so far so good, it's clear. Now we know that independent thought's highly valuable, ultimately needs to be validated by society. Aha, so society here needs to make sure that who's ever coming up with some thoughts, that this knowledge, whatever you want to call it, that this is important, and therefore that's the point here we say with validate. So society ultimately must validate independent thought, and that is clear and it is concise, and that's what we want to strive for in our writing. So again, we're at the very sentence-based level here, and now we're going to stick to the sentence-based level, but we're also going to extend it to other sentences. The idea of logical flow. How do your ideas flow within a sentence, and how do those sentences flow together? So let's take a look here at an example. Many people have contributed helpful inventions. So technology is making life easier for us. Okay, well, these people contributed, we don't know who they are, but these people contributed helpful inventions. That's good. So technology is making life easier for us. So what were these helpful inventions exactly? Were they the inventions that made life easier for us? Were they like perhaps a cell phone? Do we know what's going on here? So is there a logical flow because people have contributed inventions? Therefore life is easier for us? Well, no, it's too vague. And just because people are contributing inventions, how does that help us how does that make life easier for us? So you can see that there's just too many unanswered questions here. There's really a logical disconnect, so we want to be more specific. So let's take a look here. There's a good example. The constant influx of new technologies. So lots of new technologies can lead us to feel overwhelmed. That makes sense. There's always these new cell phones coming out, one replacing the other with 15, 20, 100 different new functions, and you can feel overwhelmed. Okay, so this is clear, it's concise, I like it, and then it moves on here where it says, nevertheless, however, many of these technologies can make our lives easier. So it's not that specific. It didn't give us anything more specific than technology, but in terms of logical flow, it's good because we have the idea that, hey, technology can make life sometimes overwhelming. However, many of these technologies do actually make our lives easier. So there's no question marks there in terms of the logical flow. And so you can see that logical flow definitely connects to clarity as well. So when you're trying to express something, that's clarity. And of course, when you're trying to express the way that ideas flow together, then that is clarity or logical flow as well. Speaking of logical flow and sentences, we have one sentence here and two sentences here. What would make a good sentence right there? Well, nevertheless, many of these technologies can make our lives easier, logically, therefore, technology, let's put TECH, mostly makes our lives more convenient, something of that nature. And that's logical flow. Instead of going off here into the metaphorical bushes, so to speak, and we're talking about something that doesn't necessarily relate to technology making our lives easier, this sentence right here, starting with therefore technology, gives us logical flow, and that's what we want to go for when we write. And so, of course, when you're learning to write, when you're improving your writing, always make sure you have logical flow. Now, another important element that you must have is the idea of style and sentence variety. And I think here's a good time for me to talk about the idea that ETS or GRE, the people grading your essays here, they aren't giving this a 6. They're not giving logical flow a scale or points from 0 to 6. They're not breaking it up into this very granular approach. These graders are basing it more on holistic grading. Holistic means big picture. And when they're doing this big picture overview of your essay, however, they're picking up on all these small things. And so if you have clarity, you have concision, you have logical flow, however, your sentences are very boring, as we're going to look at 2 examples down here, like people can help society. They can help challenge the way we think. They have to first challenge beliefs. Beliefs are sometimes wrong. Okay, well, this is clear, but it's really choppy. I understand what they're trying to say, but there's some logical flow obviously missing, but there's no style in the way the writing is here, and there's no sentence variety. Notice people, subject, they, people, they, subject, beliefs, noun again, and that's again what we call choppy writing because you're not varying the sentence structure. And now let's take a look at this good example. Each generation has thinkers who challenge accepted beliefs. Fair enough. Clarity, concision, ding, 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 very good. Oftentimes these individuals, notice, there's each generation. Now I've mixed it up here. Oftentimes, I didn't necessarily start with these individuals. Oftentimes these individuals, comma, through their intellect and passion. So I'm injecting a little statement here that we could actually get rid of. It wouldn't hurt the sentence grammatically. These individuals are able to change the way we think. But by adding this, by putting this back in, it gives us a moment to pause and add, again, what we call parenthetical information. And that helps with the flow. It helps vary up the sentences. And again, when you're reading it, that big picture, you notice little things like that. And that influences that influences the grader's overall grade or assessment of your essay. And that's why if your writing is closer to this, try to get it here. Try to learn to vary up your sentences. And I'm going to show you some great resources in a moment that will help you do exactly that. But we're not quite out of the woods here yet because we have an even better example. Why not? So what I have here is throughout history, there have always been those who challenge the established order. The realm of thinkers is no different. Much of the knowledge we have today, from the way in which gravity works to the way our traits are passed on, is because some dared to challenge prevailing notions of their times. Okay, wow. But really, does it say that much different than this? I mean, yeah, it flows a little bit better logically than that first example. But compared to this example, really, it's saying more or less the same things, but it's giving us a lot more specifics here. The language is a little bit more sophisticated, but also the flow. Notice these hyphens here. And so it is not necessary to write like this at all. And just because you can write like this does not mean you will get a 6 or a 5 or even a 4. Maybe you have this wonderful sentence and you fall asleep, or you decide to break down all logical flow in your essay. Who knows? But the essays that usually get 6 tend to have language like this, that sort of style and sentence variety. However, this good example, perfectly fine around that 4 or 5, nothing wrong. And even this essay maybe could get a 6. Again, it's that holistic, big picture approach. Do they argue their point well? That's really what they're looking for. But again, 6s usually look like that example. So how then to get to that level? I'm going to show you in a moment, but there are some things that can sabotage this here. And this idea of grammar spelling, we're actually going to look at spelling here first. Spelling. You think, wait a second, who really cares? We have spell checker. Do we really need to know how to spell? But don't necessarily look at it from that angle because the GRE graders don't. In fact, spelling is something that they hold very dear. They believe maybe it's this hallmark of true academic. Whatever it may be, though, make sure that you know how to spell words. And maybe even a better way of putting it, know those words that you struggle to spell. Sort of like a student I had, his name was John, and John loved to spell necessary like that. He would always do this on his essay, and it would be problematic because I couldn't help but notice it and would say, hey, look, the graders themselves would notice this as well. So if you can't spell certain words, come up with synonyms for these words. So necessary, maybe in the context required would work. Or sufficient, if that's easier for you to spell than necessary. Whatever it may be, but definitely try to use synonyms. Or know these weak words and constantly write them till you feel you know them. But if there's any doubt on the test, again, while you're writing, there's no spell checker, can't look anything up, use synonyms. Very key. Now, small mistakes are okay. Not these small mistakes, but small mistakes in terms of grammar. And I don't mean the dog are barking. Oh, it's only one word, the dog are versus the dog is. It's not that bad, right? Is that a small mistake? No, that's a major mistake. That's not what I mean by small mistakes in grammar. It's a very fundamental basic mistake that, of course, you'd want to avoid. What I mean by small mistakes is at a higher level. If there's not always perfect parallel structure, or maybe there's one or two misplaced modifiers, then you don't have to worry about that too much. You definitely want to capture any basic grammatical mistakes and definitely any spelling mistakes if you can. And that's why it's, of course, also important to edit at the end. Now, I talked earlier about resources that can help you with grammar, with writing holistically, with sentence flow, clarity, concision, all of that good stuff that we've gone over. And these resources are On Writing Well by William Zisner. And this really gives us a big holistic take, or big picture take on writing. A lot of this isn't just essay writing. There's travel writing in there. There's memoir writing, all this stuff that doesn't necessarily pertain to the GRE essay test, but a lot of it does. So go through there, and this can definitely help you see the big picture and how to improve your writing. But if you really want the grammar, the more nitty-gritty stuff, then Elements of Style by Strunk and White is a classic. They will help you understand the use of commas better, semicolons or hyphens if you like. They will go through words that are oftentimes confused that people use, like irregardless, to sound intelligent, but that are actually not words. The word is simply regardless. But if you use a word like irregardless in the essay, the graders will notice that, and that's definitely not going to help your score. So that's definitely something that's covered in this book. So pick these books up to help you.